The Galactic War and the Human Bride. The galaxy was in turmoil. The ancient Galactic Empire had always thrived on conquest, its borders expanding relentlessly at the expense of smaller, weaker factions. Planets had fallen, their people enslaved or destroyed, their resources claimed by the ever-hungry imperial war machine. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with an iron fist, spreading across star systems like a relentless plague, leaving little behind but wreckage and despair. Yet, despite its dominance, the Empire had met its match in the human race. The humans, though technologically inferior, had proven resilient and cunning. Their unity in the face of adversity had earned them the grudging respect of many, even the most ruthless of rulers. And at the heart of this human resistance stood Lord Kale Knightwood, a diplomat, a tactician, and above all, a man who could negotiate his way out of almost any situation. Lord Kale had come from humble beginnings, born on a small, war-torn human colony. But his mind, sharp and calculating, had propelled him to the top ranks of the United Earth Federation's diplomatic corps. He was known for his incredible ability to broker peace, to outwit enemies with his silver tongue, and to manipulate situations with a gentle touch. But few knew of his true nature. Beneath the facade of a peacemaker lay a man who had once orchestrated the downfall of an entire planetary system through nothing more than whispered words and well-placed lies. He was a master of strategy, and while he might prefer diplomacy, he was willing to burn the galaxy down if necessary. And it was Kale's wedding day that would set the stage for the greatest conflict the galaxy had seen in centuries. Emily Winters, a bright young woman from a peaceful farming colony on the outer rim of human space, had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She had always dreamed of a simple life, a life of family, laughter, and a quiet existence among the stars. But when she met Kale at a diplomatic event, her world turned upside down. Kale, with his piercing blue eyes and enigmatic charm, swept her off her feet. He was different from the other men she had known, calm, collected, and yet full of mystery. She soon discovered that he was not just any diplomat, but a man whose actions had shaped the fate of countless star systems. Their love was swift but deep, and in the course of a few months, Emily found herself standing in a grand hall, preparing for her wedding to a man who was both revered and feared across the galaxy. Her wedding was to be a celebration, a peaceful moment in a galaxy filled with war and bloodshed. She was to marry the man who had brokered peace treaties with hostile alien species and secured the fragile alliances that had kept humanity from falling to the Empire. Unbeknownst to Emily, however, there were forces watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Galactic King, a ruler whose empire stretched across the stars like a dark shadow, had been keeping a close eye on Kale. The king was known for his brutal campaigns, his merciless expansion, and his relentless thirst for power. He had conquered countless worlds, crushed rebellions with an iron fist, and cared for little except for his own rule. Kale had been a thorn in the king's side for years. His diplomatic success in uniting various human colonies had been an affront to the Empire's authoritarian rule. The king saw this wedding as an opportunity, a chance to break the spirit of the humans once and for all. If Kale could be humiliated, if the wedding could be disrupted, the humans would lose their confidence, their morale shattered. It would be a victory for the Galactic Empire, a step towards unifying the galaxy under the king's rule. On the eve of the wedding, as Emily prepared to step into her new life with Kale, the Galactic King issued a decree. His elite forces, the feared Zothar Legion, were dispatched to destroy the wedding and capture Kale. But the king had made one critical mistake. He underestimated the power of the woman who was about to marry the most ruthless diplomat in the galaxy. Emily Winters, a seemingly ordinary woman, was not what she appeared to be. She had grown up in a peaceful colony, yes, but she was no stranger to the politics of the galaxy. Her father, a former military strategist, had taught her much about the complex web of alliances, betrayals, and power struggles that define the universe. She had learned that in a world governed by war and diplomacy, there were no simple lives. As the wedding ceremony commenced in the Grand Hall, filled with noble guests, diplomats, and soldiers from various factions, the Zothar Legion made their move. Without warning, the massive doors of the hall crashed open, and armed soldiers poured in. Blaster fire rang through the air, and screams filled the once serene space. The guests, unprepared for such an attack, scrambled in panic. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, before her instincts took over. Her mind raced not with fear, but with resolve. She knew that the moment had come. Kale had not just married her for love, but because he trusted her to be a part of something far greater than herself. Kale, standing beside her, turned his head sharply, his cold, calculating eyes scanning the chaos around him. In an instant, he was no longer the calm diplomat, but the ruthless strategist he had been trained to be. He had seen the signs of an impending attack long before the doors had burst open, and now it was time to act. With a single glance, Kale signaled to his personal guards, hidden among the guests, who quickly sprang into action. The battle began in earnest, but this was no ordinary skirmish. It was a war, a brutal confrontation, and it was all happening at Emily's wedding. As the Zothar Legion advanced, the tension in the room escalated. Emily knew the fate of the galaxy was at stake, but she also knew that her husband, her true ruthless husband, was ready to turn the tide. The Ruthless Diplomat. The moment the Zothar Legion breached the doors, the entire atmosphere shifted from one of joy to one of chaos. But for Cale Knightwood, it was as if time had slowed. He had seen this coming, predicted it down to the smallest detail. Years of working in the cutthroat corridors of galactic diplomacy had honed his mind into a weapon as sharp as any blade. What appeared to be a simple wedding ceremony was, in truth, a carefully planned military operation. As Emily stood frozen in the center of the chaos, Cale's transformation was instant. His cool composure, the calm diplomat, was gone, replaced by the man who had once been responsible for entire planetary systems fall under the guise of diplomacy. He was no longer the man who brokered peace. He was a ruthless tactician who had destroyed entire empires when they threatened his people or his interests. The Zothar Legion, elite soldiers under the direct command of the Galactic King, had underestimated him. They had assumed that the diplomat they had sought to eliminate was harmless, an insignificant pawn in the grand game of galactic politics. They were wrong. In the span of a heartbeat, Cale's guards moved into position. They had been embedded in the crowd, disguised as wedding guests, waiting for his command. With military precision, they struck, disarming the nearest attackers in a flash. But Cale's actions were not those of a simple military leader. No, his brilliance lay in his understanding of how to manipulate and control. This battle wasn't just about physical strength. It was about strategy, timing, and the ability to control perception. The enemy needed to believe they were already losing, to lose their will before they had a chance to rally. With a subtle motion, Cale's signal reached the hidden snipers perched above, their scopes trained on key Zothar leaders. The moment the first shot rang out, the attackers fell into disarray. But this was only the beginning. As the Zothar forces scrambled to regain control, Cale activated his final strategy. Emily, still in shock, barely had time to react when Cale grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a hidden passage within the wedding hall. The corridors of the palace were a labyrinth of stone and steel, known only to Cale and his closest allies. As they moved swiftly through the shadowed halls, Emily could hear the distant sounds of blaster fire and the frantic shouts of the enemy. Cale, leading her through the maze, spoke with urgency, his voice calm but authoritative. "I need you to trust me. Stay close, and don't speak unless I tell you to. We're not just fighting for our lives, Emily. We're fighting for the future of the human race." She nodded, her heart racing, still trying to make sense of what was happening. Emily had never imagined her wedding day could be anything but a celebration. She had been raised in a peaceful, quiet colony, far from the intrigues of galactic politics. But now, she was caught in the middle of something far bigger than she could have ever anticipated. The two of them reached a secluded control room deep within the palace, where Cale's inner circle had already begun executing their contingency plans. The control room was a nexus of communication, surveillance, and tactics. There, Cale wasted no time, barking orders to his officers and technicians, his voice cold and commanding. "Activate the planetary shields," Cale instructed, his eyes scanning the displays. "Get me a direct line to the human fleet in orbit. We need to block their reinforcements. If we don't, we'll be overrun before we can turn the tide." Emily watched him work, her mind slowly starting to understand just how deep Kale's role in the galaxy's politics ran. He wasn't just a diplomat. He was a master of strategy, his reach extending far beyond what anyone had realized. She had been living in the shadows of his world, unaware of the dangerous web of alliances and enemies Kale had woven over the years. This man, her husband, was not just a man who charmed her with his quiet strength and mysterious past. He was something far more terrifying. A ruthless tactician, capable of using not just weapons, but the intricacies of diplomacy itself, to destroy those who oppose him. Kale's fingers danced across the controls, issuing orders that would turn the tables on the Galactic King's forces. He activated hidden communications channels, sending messages to various galactic factions that owed him favors, each one now obligated to provide support in his time of need. A quiet smile played on his lips as the messages went out, knowing full well that they would be received and acted upon. In the world of galactic diplomacy, debts were always paid in full one way or another. Kale's mind worked like a machine, calculating every move. He had already accounted for the possibility of the Galactic King attacking the wedding, and his response was nothing less than perfect. In the span of minutes, the balance of power had shifted. The Zothar Legion was on the defensive. Their assault, while brutal, was beginning to lose momentum as Kale's allies moved into position. At the same time, Kale ordered the activation of a network of orbital satellites equipped with advanced weapon systems. Satellites that had long been kept in reserve, hidden from the eyes of his enemies. With a flick of his wrist, Kale unleashed a barrage of high-powered laser beams, targeted directly at key Imperial ships orbiting the planet. The attackers, expecting an easy victory, were caught completely off guard as their fleet was decimated within minutes. "What are you doing?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Isn't this too much?" "The Empire will retaliate." Kale turned to her, his expression hardening. "The Empire doesn't understand diplomacy, Emily. They only understand power. And right now, we have the power to make them rethink their entire strategy. I'm not just defending myself. I'm ensuring that no one threatens the humans again." As Kale orchestrated the battlefield from control room, Emily came to a chilling realization. She was no longer the simple farm girl who had dreamed of a quiet life. She was now part of something far greater, something darker, more dangerous. And with Kale by her side, there was no going back. The Galactic King had made a fatal mistake. He had attacked the wrong bride, and he had no idea that her husband, the one they thought to be a mere diplomat, was the most ruthless strategist the galaxy had ever seen. The battle for the galaxy had just begun. Shadows of the children. The galaxy was vast, but the lives of Eric, Celine, and Kale Jr. would forever be intertwined by their mother's death, a tragedy that had shaped them into warriors, strategists, and rebels. Though separated by distance, their shared grief and desire for revenge bound them together in ways that nothing else could. But before they could face the Empire, each child would need to walk a different path, and the choices they made in their exile would shape the future of the galaxy. The Mercenary King. The outer rim of the galaxy was a lawless place, filled with bounty hunters, mercenaries, and traitors who lived by their own rules. After escaping the reach of the Empire, Eric had made his home in this desolate wilderness. The pain of his mother's death was still raw, but was tempered by a burning desire for vengeance. His first step toward that goal was to make a name for himself in the mercenary world, a world that valued strength above all else. He joined a notorious mercenary band known as the Iron Claws, a group of hardened warriors who sold their services to the highest bidder. At first, Eric was nothing more than a newcomer, just another fighter in a sea of soldiers. But his skills in combat were unparalleled. He was a born leader, and his natural charisma and tactical mind quickly earned him the respect of his peers. It wasn't long before he rose through the ranks, becoming the leader of the Iron Claws at the age of 23. Under his command, the band became more than just mercenaries. They became a force of nature, feared across the galaxy for their brutal efficiency and unrelenting tactics. They took on missions for warlords, rebel factions, and even the Empire itself. Eric didn't care who paid him. His loyalty was to the cause of revenge, and every contract was a step toward the ultimate goal, the destruction of the Empire. But despite his growing power, Eric remained haunted by the memory of his mother. He could no longer simply fight for money. His battles had become personal. Every victory, every conquered world, was a small piece of the puzzle that would lead him back to the Emperor's throne. The galaxy, he realized, would never be the same after his reckoning with the Empire. Selene, the mystic, while Eric carved his name in the blood-stained history of mercenaries, Selene sought a different path. She had always been more thoughtful of the three siblings, the one who asked questions and sought deeper understanding. Her training with the ancient monks of Zareth, a secluded order of mystics, had transformed her. The monks had taught her to tap into the very energy of the universe, a hidden force that flowed through all living things. At the age of 16, Selene had traveled to Zareth, an ancient world hidden from the eyes of the Empire, where the monks had secluded themselves for millennia. There, she had learned to harness the mystical powers that ran through her veins. She was able to control the elements, summon visions, and manipulate the forces of the natural world. Her abilities were both feared and revered, and it was said that she could summon storms with nothing but her will. But her true power lay in the mystical knowledge she had gained. The monks had taught her the forgotten histories of the galaxy, including ancient prophecies that foretold the fall of empires and the rise of new powers. Selene learned that her mother's death was part of a much larger cosmic struggle, one that had been unfolding for centuries. The Empire's reign was not simply the result of the Emperor's ambition, but the result of forces that had long been set into motion by ancient powers beyond the Empire's comprehension. Selene knew that the path of vengeance was not the only path before her. She had the power to shape the future of the galaxy, to guide it into a new age of peace and balance. But that peace could only come after the fall of the Empire. She swore to herself that her powers would be used to defeat the Emperor, no matter the cost. The hacker and strategist. While Eric and Selene were honing their physical and mystical skills, the youngest sibling, Cale Jr., was shaping a different kind of weapon. Though only 12 years old when his mother was executed, Cale had been the most driven by anger. His mother's death had burned a hole in his heart, but he had channeled that anger into something far more dangerous: cyber warfare. Cale had always been a brilliant strategist, even at a young age. He had spent hours poring over the Empire's data networks, learning the secrets of their most guarded systems. It wasn't long before he became one of the galaxy's most skilled hackers. By the time he reached his late teens, Cale Jr. had infiltrated the Imperial mainframe, gathering intelligence on their operations, their weaknesses, and their plans. He was a ghost in the machine, unseen and undetected. But Cale's skills went far beyond just hacking. He had learned how to control entire fleets of starships with nothing more than his fingers on a keyboard. With access to the Empire's vast communication networks, he could manipulate entire fleets, turning their weapons against them. He became a digital ghost, erasing his presence from the Empire's systems as he sabotaged their military assets. Cale was determined to bring the Empire down from within. He knew that the Emperor's empire was fragile, held together by fear and bureaucracy. If he could disrupt their communications, if he could destroy their infrastructure, then the Empire would crumble from within. His vengeance would not be through weapons or armies. It would be through the power of information. The reunion, a call to arms. Years passed, and the siblings' paths began to converge once more. The galaxy had been waiting for a change, for someone to rise up against the Empire's crushing rule. And as the whispers of rebellion spread, so did the news of the children of Lyra Cale. The three siblings, scattered across the stars, had become legends in their own right. Eric was known as the Mercenary King, a ruthless leader of the Iron Claws. Selene was whispered about as the Stormbringer, a powerful mystic with the ability to control the elements. And Cale Jr. had become a ghost, a hacker who could bring down the Empire with a single keystroke. But it was only when a call for rebellion grew louder that they finally reunited. They met on a remote planet, far from the reach of the Empire, in secret. Their paths had brought them back together, and now, with their combined strength, they would strike at the heart of the Empire. They shared their stories, their struggles, their plans. Eric spoke of his mercenary battles, Selene of the ancient powers she had uncovered, and Cale the secrets he had learned through the Empire's networks. Together, they forged a new alliance, a powerful force of vengeance, armed with the strength of their mother's legacy and their own unique talents. The siblings knew that their war was far from over, but the first steps had been taken. The Empire was wounded, and its leaders were growing desperate. But the children of Lyra Kale were united, stronger than ever. Their revenge was now more than just a personal mission. It was a galactic cause, a fight for the freedom of countless worlds and for the legacy of their mother. Fall of the Empire and legacy. The Empire, once an unstoppable force of tyranny, was now crumbling. The whispers of rebellion had turned into a roar, and the Galactic Empire found itself surrounded by enemies on all fronts. The children of Lyra Kale had launched their campaign with precision, and the galaxy was feeling the tremors of the coming storm. But the final act was yet to come. The Empire's most powerful defenses had not yet been breached, and the Emperor himself had yet to face the wrath of the bloodline that he had betrayed. The final battle. March on the Imperial capital. For years, the siblings had operated in the shadows, picking off Imperial strongholds one by one. They had broken supply lines, sabotaged military operations, and turned entire sectors of the galaxy against the Emperor. But now, it was time for their greatest challenge. It was time to face the heart of the Empire, the Imperial capital, the seat of power where Emperor Vurek resided. The capital was heavily fortified, its defenses seemingly impenetrable. It was a city of steel and stone, surrounded by the most advanced military installations in the galaxy. Eric, Celine, and Kale Jr. knew that they could not win by force alone. The Empire had too many resources, too many soldiers, and too much technology. They needed to strike at the very core of the Empire, where its leadership and symbol of power resided. Their plan was simple, yet deadly. While Eric led the ground assault, Celine would use her mystical powers to disrupt the city's defenses, and Kale would hijack the Empire's systems to break their security measures. It was a coordinated attack, one that would strike fear into the heart of the Emperor and his followers. The rebellion's forces, bolstered by Eric's mercenaries and Celine's mystical army, gathered outside the Imperial capital. The city trembled as they prepared for the final assault. The people, who had once cowered under the Empire's rule, now looked on with hope. The children of Lyra Kale had come to free them. As the attack began, the Empire fought back with everything it had. Imperial ships swooped down from above, while ground forces launched counterattacks against the rebels. But the children were prepared. Eric led his forces with the same precision he'd used in all his campaigns, striking at key locations and wreaking havoc on the Empire's lines. His mercenaries fought with fury that only years of training and vengeance could fuel. Meanwhile, Celine stood on the outskirts of the battle, her hands raised to the sky. She whispered words from ancient texts, calling upon the storm spirits that had served her for years. Lightning crackled through the sky, and a fierce thunderstorm descended on the Imperial forces, causing chaos and confusion. Her magic tore through the city's defense shields, opening the gates for the rebels to march in. And Kale Jr., from his hidden position deep within the Empire's network, launched his most daring attack. He hacked into the Imperial mainframe, causing the Empire's most advanced security systems to collapse. The capital's defense grid malfunctioned, and the Emperor's elite guards were left vulnerable. He erased all communication channels, turning the Empire's military into a disorganized mess. The final confrontation, face-to-face with the Emperor. After hours of fierce combat, the Imperial capital fell into chaos. The streets were littered with the wreckage of warships, and the cries of battle echoed through the city. The Empire's final line of defense had been breached, and the path to the Emperor's palace lay open. Eric, Celine, and Kale Jr. led their forces to the heart of the capital, where the Emperor awaited them, ready to make his final stand. Inside the grand throne room, Emperor Vurek sat atop his magnificent throne, his expression one of defiance and rage. The room was adorned with gold and jewels, symbols of the Empire's unshakable power. But it was all facade, a crumbling mask, and beneath it lay fear. The moment the siblings stepped into the throne room, the Emperor's eyes locked onto them, his expression twisted with anger and disbelief. "You think you can bring down the Empire, children?" he spat. "You are nothing but shadows of your mother. She was weak, and so are you." Eric stepped forward, his fists clenched in anger. "You killed her. You took everything from us. And now it's your turn to fall." The Emperor rose from his throne, his eyes filled with contempt. "You are nothing, a mercenary, a witch, a hacker. You think you can defeat me? I am the Emperor. I built this empire. I control everything. For a brief moment, the room fell silent. The siblings exchanged a look, one that conveyed the pain, the years of suffering, and the righteous fury they felt. Then, in unison, they advanced. Eric engaged the Emperor's elite guards with ferocity, cutting through them with ease. His years of training and battlefield experience were brought to bear as he cleaved through their ranks. Meanwhile, Kale Jr. launched a digital assault, overriding the palace's security systems, disabling more of the Emperor's guards and cutting off his escape routes. And Selene, the mystical force, summoned all of her power with a flick of her hand. She called upon the storm, lightning striking the throne room as the winds howled. The walls trembled, and the very air itself seemed to crackle with energy. She wasn't just fighting for revenge. She was fighting for the galaxy's future. The Emperor's fall. Emperor Vurek, once so powerful, found himself cornered, his empire in ruins and his guards defeated. In the face of the siblings, his arrogance crumbled into desperation. "You will never win," he gasped, trying to stand tall despite his growing fear. "We already have," Eric said, his voice cold as steel. "Your empire is finished." With one final movement, Eric stepped forward and struck the Emperor down, the blow swift and merciless. The throne room fell silent as the Emperor collapsed, his body lifeless at the feet of the children he had wronged. The siblings stood together, victorious, but the weight of the moment was not lost on them. They had avenged their mother, but at what cost? The galaxy had been ravaged by years of conflict, and while the Empire was no more, the path to peace was still a long one. Legacy, a new dawn for the galaxy. With the death of Emperor Vurek, the Galactic Empire fell. Its vast territories were left in turmoil, its military scattered. The children of Lyra-Kale had fulfilled their mission. They had avenged their mother, and they had liberated the galaxy from the Empire's oppressive rule. But the galaxy was not yet at peace. The siblings knew that their work had only just begun. Eric, now a leader of the rebellion, began to organize a new government, one that would give power back to the people. Selene, with her wisdom and magical abilities, became a spiritual guide, helping the galaxy rebuild its shattered culture and traditions. Kale Jr., the brilliant strategist, worked to ensure that the new galaxy was united, connected, and free from the mistakes of the past.